The cargo bay doors screeched open, and Rust flinched at the sound. Her massive body pressed against the far wall, wings tucked tight against her sides. Daniel watched from the catwalk above, his chest tightening at the sight. 3 years they had been together, and she still jumped at every loud noise. He climbed down the metal ladder, boots ringing against the rungs. Around him, the HFY steadfast hummed with activity. Weapons drills in the distance. Engines cycling. The constant mechanical heartbeat of a warship that never truly rested. Rust hated it all. "Hey, girl," Daniel said softly, approaching with his hand extended. "I brought you something." Rust lifted her head. Her scales were a deep rust-red color, hence the name, but lately they had been looking dull. Gray almost. She sniffed at the container Daniel carried, then took the offering delicately between teeth that could crush steel. Fresh meat from the galley. She ate slowly, without enthusiasm. Daniel sat on a crate nearby and studied her. She was enormous now, easily 20 feet from nose to tail. When he had found her on HFY, she had been small enough to curl up in his arms. That mining colony seemed like a lifetime ago. He remembered the tunnels, the way she had cowered in the darkness, ribs showing through patchy scales. Raiders had destroyed her homeworld 6 months before that. She was the only survivor anyone had found. Most people had wanted to study her, put her in a zoo, sell her to a collector. Daniel had simply given her a choice. Stay or go. She had pressed her small head against his chest and stayed. "Captain," a voice crackled through his comm. Patricia Webb, his second in command. "You need it on the bridge." 5 minutes, Daniel replied. "Sir, Admiral Harrison is waiting." Daniel sighed. He reached out and scratched under Rust's shin, the one spot that always made her rumble with pleasure. Today, even that barely got a response. "I'll be back soon," he promised. "Try to eat more, okay?" Rust watched him leave with ancient, sad eyes. The bridge was controlled chaos. Officers worked at their stations, coordinating supply runs and patrol routes. Admiral Harrison's face filled the main screen, his expression hard. "Captain Cross," Harrison said without preamble, "I'm told you're still housing that creature on your ship." Daniel kept his voice level. "Rust is a member of my crew, sir. She's a liability. That cargo bay could hold additional ammunition, medical supplies, actual military resources. With respect, Admiral, she doesn't take up that much space." Harrison's eyes narrowed. "I received complaints. Your crew says the creature is disruptive, loud, dangerous." "Who complained?" Daniel asked, though he could guess. A few of the newer transfers had been vocal about Rust from day one. That's not relevant. What matters is that the Steadfast is a warship, not a sanctuary for exotic animals. I'm ordering you to transfer the creature to a proper facility at our next port. Daniel felt his jaw clench. "No, sir." The bridge went silent. Patricia shot him a warning look. "Excuse me." Harrison's voice could have cut glass. "Permission to speak freely, sir." "Denied." "You have your orders, Captain." The screen went dark. Daniel stood there for a moment, aware of every eye on him. Then he turned and walked to his ready room without a word. Patricia followed him in. "Daniel, you can't refuse a direct order from an admiral. Watch me. They'll remove you from command. Court-martial you, maybe." Daniel pulled up files on his personal terminal. Schematics of the Steadfast. Environmental specifications. Dragon biology reports he had been collecting for months. There's an old observation deck on the port side, scheduled for conversion to armory space. So what if we used it for something else?" Patricia stared at him. "You want to build that dragon a room? On a military vessel?" "She's dying, Patricia." Daniel's voice cracked slightly. He cleared his throat. "I spoke with Churk yesterday. He examined her. Dragons and her species, when they experience chronic stress, they just fade. Stop eating. Stop moving. Their scales turn gray and they die." "Daniel, she saved my life on HFY. Did I ever tell you that? After I found her, raiders came back looking for survivors to sell. She was still half-starved, barely healed, and she fought them off while I was unconscious from a cave-in. A young dragon protecting a human she'd known for 2 weeks." Patricia was quiet for a moment. "Fleet Command will never approve it. Then I won't ask for approval." "That's insane." Probably. Daniel pulled up the observation deck schematics. But I'm doing it anyway. I need to know if you're with me. Patricia looked at the plans, then at Daniel, then back at the plans. Finally, she sighed. You're going to get us both demoted. Is that a yes? That's a yes, you stubborn idiot. She leaned over the terminal. But if we're doing this, we're doing it right. We'll need help. Louise from engineering. Keiko from hydroponics. People we trust. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me if we don't end up in the brig. That night, Daniel returned to the cargo bay. Rust was curled in her usual corner, barely moving. He sat beside her, his back against her warm flank. I'm going to build you something, he said quietly. A real home. Not this cold metal box. Somewhere with plants and water and windows to see the stars. Somewhere you can actually live, not just exist. Russ made a small sound, almost a whimper. I know you're tired. I know this ship is loud and scary and nothing like what you need. But hold on a little longer. Please, just hold on. He felt her wing unfold slightly, draping over him like a blanket. In all their time together, she had never done that before. It was a gesture of trust, of family. Daniel pulled out his tablet and began sketching. A garden in space. A sanctuary on a warship. The most impossible thing he had ever attempted. But for Rust, he would make it real. 3 days passed before Admiral Harrison called again. Daniel had been expecting it. He had also been expecting the anger in the old man's voice. Your request is denied. Absolutely not. Do you understand me, Captain? Daniel had submitted the formal paperwork anyway, knowing the answer. A proposal to convert the port observation deck into a specialized living quarters. For Rust, he had included medical reports, environmental studies, even testimonials from crew members who had witnessed Rust's gentle nature. I understand, sir. Good. Then we're done here. Transfer that creature at the next station, or I'll send someone to do it for you. The screen went black again. Daniel sat in his ready room, staring at the blank display. Behind him, Patricia cleared her throat. So what now? Now we build it anyway. Daniel, that's career suicide. My career means nothing if I let her die. Patricia crossed her arms. You really love that dragon, don't you? She's family, Daniel said simply. When my parents died, when the fleet became my whole life, when I thought I couldn't trust anyone, she was there. She never judged, never demanded. She just existed beside me, and that was enough. That's beautiful and all, but we need a plan. Harrison will have inspectors checking on us. Daniel pulled up a timeline. Our next inspection isn't for 6 weeks. The port observation deck is off the main patrol routes. If we're careful, we can do most of the work without anyone noticing. And if we get caught, then we get caught. Daniel stood and walked to the window. Outside, stars streaked past in the artificial blur of faster-than-light travel. I've spent 20 years following orders, fighting battles, watching good people die for a cause I believe in. But what's the point of protecting the galaxy if we can't protect the ones right beside us? Patricia was quiet for a long moment. You're giving me a speech. You only do that when you're trying to convince yourself, not me. Daniel laughed despite everything. Maybe. Fine. I'm in. But we need more than just the two of us. They held the first meeting in the engineering bay during Gamma shift, when most of the ship slept. Luis Reyes showed up first, wiping grease from his hands. Keiko Sato came next, still wearing her hydroponics apron. Then others. A pilot named Amy Richardson. A young ensign named David Brooks. A weapons officer named Tomas Ruiz. 0.8 people total. All volunteers. Daniel explained the plan. The old observation deck would become Rust's sanctuary. They would work during off hours, using spare materials and recycled equipment. Environmental controls. A water system. Plants. Everything a dragon needed to thrive. This is illegal, Luis pointed out. Not arguing, just stating facts. Yes, Daniel agreed. We could all be discharged. Yes. When do we start? They began that night. The observation deck was a mess. Decades of neglect had left it filled with broken equipment and dust. The windows were intact, though, huge panels that showed the cosmos beyond. That was the important part. Russ needed to see the sky, even if it was the artificial sky of deep space. They worked quietly, Luis rig temperuri lighting. Keiko assessed which plans could survive in the space. Amy and David started hauling out the junk, load by load, disguising it as regular waste disposal. Daniel worked alongside them, welding and lifting and planning. His hands blistered. His back ached. He had not done physical labor like this since his academy days, and his body reminded him of every year that had passed since then. On the fourth night, Tomas arrived with something unexpected, a small pump and tubing. For water, he explained. Figured she might like running water. Dragons do, right? How did you know that? Tomas shrugged. Read about it. After you took her in, I got curious. Did some research. It was a small thing, a minor detail, but it meant someone else cared. Someone else saw Rust as more than just an inconvenient animal. The work continued for 2 weeks. They installed environmental controls that could adjust temperature and humidity. Luis jury-rigged the system to pull condensation from the ship's recycling units, creating a small stream that would flow over rocks into a shallow pool. Keiko brought plants from hydroponics, explaining which ones would help clean the air and which ones were just beautiful. Daniel barely slept. Between his regular duties and the secret construction, he was running on caffeine and determination. Patricia covered for him when he nodded off during briefings. The crew pretended not to notice. The close call came during week 3. Admiral Harrison sent an inspection team without warning. They arrived during Delta shift when half of Daniel's volunteers were in the observation deck installing the water feature. Patricia intercepted the inspectors at the airlock. Gentlemen, welcome aboard the Steadfast. Let me give you the full tour. That won't be necessary, Commander. We're here for a specific inspection. Of course. But surely the Admiral would want you to see our recent upgrades to the weapon systems? Captain Cross has been very proud of those. She led them the long way, through every uninteresting corridor she could find. Meanwhile, Daniel received her urgent message and raced to the observation deck. When he arrived, his team was frantically hiding tools and covering the half-finished construction with tarps. Everyone out. Now, use the maintenance shaft. They disappeared just as the inspectors reached the sealed deck door. Daniel positioned himself in front of it, reviewing a tablet as if checking routine maintenance logs. Captain Cross, the lead inspector said, we need to verify the armory expansion in this section. Armory expansion? That's not scheduled until next quarter. Our records show this observation deck was slated for conversion. Those are old plans. We determined it wasn't structurally sound. The hull plating needs replacement. It's been sealed off pending repairs. The inspector frowned. I need to see inside. Daniel's heart hammered. Behind that door was undeniable evidence of everything he had been building. I'm afraid that's not possible. The environmental seal is the only thing preventing atmosphere loss in that section. Opening it could compromise the entire deck. It was a complete lie. The inspector seemed to sense it. He stepped closer to the door. Then Patricia arrived, slightly out of breath. Captain, urgent message from Fleet Command. Eyes only. I'm in the middle of, sir, it's priority alpha. Daniel had no idea what she was doing, but he trusted her. Excuse me, gentlemen. Commander Webb will assist you with the rest of your inspection. He left, walking calmly until he rounded the corner. Then he ran to his ready room, where Patricia joined him moments later. They're going to check the door, Daniel said. No, they won't. I told them there was a radiation leak in that section from a damaged sensor array. They're not cleared for exposure. Is that true? Does it matter? They believed me. The inspectors left an hour later, their report noting minor concerns, but nothing worth escalating. Daniel and Patricia watched them depart from the bridge, both trying not to show their relief. That was too close, Patricia said quietly. I know. Maybe we should stop. Finish what we can and just know. Daniel's voice was firm. We're too far in now, and Rust is getting worse. Churik says she has maybe a month left if things don't change. Patricia looked at him with something like sadness. You know this can't end well, right? Probably not. But at least it will end with her having had one good thing. One place where she felt safe. That night, Daniel visited Rust in the cargo bay. She lifted her head when he approached, and he saw how much thinner she had become. Her eyes were dimmer. Her movements slower. Just a little longer, he whispered pressing his forehead against her snout. Hold on just a little longer. I'm building you something wonderful. Russ made a soft sound, almost like a question. You'll see. I promise. Week 5 brought unexpected gifts. A package arrived during a supply run, addressed to Daniel, but with no return information. Inside were smooth river stones, dozens of them, polished and perfect. No note. No explanation. Louise turned one over in his hands. Dragons arrange stones, right? To mark their territory. How did you know that? Daniel asked. Someone left a book in the engineering bay. All about dragon behavior and psychology. Been reading it during breaks. Daniel felt something warm expand his chest. His crew was learning about Rust, caring about her. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. The stones went into the observation deck, arranged in careful patterns around the water feature. Keiko added moss between them, tiny green cushions that made the whole thing look ancient and natural rather than constructed. The transformation was remarkable. What had been a cold, abandoned space now felt alive. The environmental controls worked perfectly, creating pockets of different temperatures and humidity levels. Russ could choose where to be comfortable. The plants thrived under artificial sunlight, growing faster than Keiko had predicted. The water burbled over rocks in a peaceful rhythm that seemed to calm everyone who heard it. But the real magic was in the details. Someone had programmed the lighting to mimic sunrise and sunset. Someone else had built a raised platform where Russ could perch and watch the stars through the massive windows. Amy Richardson had even found a way to pipe in natural sounds, recordings of wind and rain, and distant bird calls. IT was not just a room. It was a home. Daniel stood in the center of it during Gamma's shift, alone except for the gentle sounds of water and rustling leaves. He thought about his own childhood home, long gone now. His mother's garden, where he had played as a boy. The way sunlight had filtered through leaves. The smell of earth after rain. They had built something that felt like those memories. A piece of earth, growing impossibly aboard a warship millions of miles from home. She'll love it, Patricia said from the doorway. Daniel turned. You think so? I know so. When do you want to bring her? Soon. We just need to finish the den area. The den was Russ's hiding place. A cave-like alcove built into one corner. Dragons needed spaces where they could retreat when overwhelmed. Dark places. Safe places. They had used salvaged hull plates to create the structure, lined with soft materials scavenged from old bedding and thermal blankets. David Brooks worked on it constantly, obsessed with getting every detail right. He had welded and re-welded the entrance 3 times, making sure the edges were smooth and wouldn't catch on rust scales. He installed small lights inside that could be dimmed or brightened based on her preference. Why do you care so much? Daniel asked him one night. David paused his welding, lifting his mask. He was young, barely 22, fresh from the academy. My little sister had anxiety. Bad. She needed a closet in our house. Just a small space where she could go when things got too loud. My parents didn't understand at first. Thought she was being dramatic. He turned back to his work. But when they finally built her that space, put cushions in there and soft lights, she got better. Like having that one safe place made the rest of the world manageable. Your sister, she's doing okay now. Yeah, she's a teacher actually. Works with kids who have similar issues. David resumed welding. Point is, everyone needs a place to hide sometimes. Even dragons. The last piece fell into place on a Tuesday. Keiko brought the final plants, flowering ones that would bloom in cycles, ensuring there was always color in the space. Luis completed the environmental system calibration, guaranteeing stable conditions year-round. Tomas added the finishing touch, a small fountain in the corner that created negative ions, supposedly good for mood and health. They stood together, all 8 of them, and looked at what they had built. We should bring her now, Amy said, before someone notices. Daniel agreed. But first, he needed to see if Russ could even make the journey. She had been declining rapidly. Sometimes she did not respond when he called. Sometimes she barely opened her eyes. He found her in the cargo bay, curled in her usual corner, thinner than ever, her breathing shallow. Rushed. Hey girl, wake up. She stirred slightly. I need you to come with me. Can you do that? Can you walk a little? Her eyes opened, dull and tired. For a moment, Daniel thought she would refuse. Then, slowly she uncurled. Her movements were stiff and painful to watch. She stood on shaking legs. That's it. Just follow me. They made their way through the corridors during Gamma shift, when most of the crew slept. Rust moved slowly, pausing every few meters to rest. Daniel walked beside her, one hand on her shoulder, encouraging her forward. Not much farther. You're doing great. They reached the observation deck. Daniel opened the door, and warm, humid air spilled out. The smell of earth and water and growing things. Rust hesitated at the threshold. It's okay, Daniel said softly. Go ahead. It's yours. Rust took one tentative step inside, then another. She lifted her head, nostrils flaring, taking in the scents. Her eyes, so dull moments before, began to brighten. She walked to the water feature and lowered her head to drink. Then she moved to the plants, brushing against them gently. She examined the stones, the den, the perching platform. She spread her wings slightly, testing the space, and found it was large enough to stretch without hitting walls. Then she made a sound Daniel had heard only once before during construction. A deep, resonant hum that came from somewhere in her chest. A sound of contentment, of relief, of coming home. Rust walked to the center of the space and lay down, curling into a comfortable position for the first time in months. Her tail wrapped around her body, her wings folded neatly. She looked at Daniel with clear, bright eyes and made the humming sound again. Daniel felt tears on his face. He wiped them away, embarrassed, but when he looked around, half his team was crying too. She likes it, Keiko whispered. Yeah, Daniel managed. Yeah, she does. They left Rust to explore her new home, though Daniel stayed behind for a while, sitting against the wall and watching her. She moved from place to place, examining everything with renewed energy. She drank from the fountain. She arranged some of the stones. She climbed onto the perching platform and looked out at the stars. For the first time since he had brought her aboard the Steadfast, Rust looked truly at peace. Patricia found Daniel there an hour later. We have a problem. What kind of problem? The big kind. The environmental systems in this section are showing on the main monitoring grid. Someone in Ops is going to notice the energy draw soon. Daniel stood. How long do we have? Maybe a day. Maybe less. Then we have a day to figure out how to explain this. Daniel, there is no explanation that ends well. I know. He looked back at Rust, who was now resting in her den, visible only as a patch of rust-red scales in the soft darkness. But at least she got to see it. At least she knows someone cared enough to try. Patricia sighed. You're going to make me cry, and I don't cry. Sure you don't. They stood together in silence, watching a dragon sleep peacefully for the first time in years. Outside the windows, stars wheeled past in their ancient dance. Inside, something gentle grew aboard a ship built for war. And for one perfect moment, everything was exactly as it should be. The summons arrived at dawn. Fleet Command wanted Daniel on a secure channel immediately. Not requested, not invited. Ordered that he took the call in his ready room, knowing what was coming. Admiral Harrison's face appeared on screen, and behind him sat 4 other high-ranking officers. A formal review board. Captain Cross, Harrison began, his voice cold. We've detected significant, unauthorized modifications to your vessel. Energy consumption patterns inconsistent with approved systems. Environmental controls running in a supposedly sealed section. Care to explain? Daniel straightened his uniform. I converted the port observation deck into specialized quarters. For the Dragon. Yes, sir. Despite my direct order to transfer that creature. Yes, sir. One of the other officers leaned forward. Admiral Rodriguez, if Daniel remembered correctly. Captain, do you understand the severity of what you've done? Unauthorized modification of fleet property. Misuse of military resources. Direct insubordination. These are court-martial offenses. I understand, sir. Then why? Rodriguez actually seemed curious rather than angry. Why risk your career, your freedom, for an animal? Because she's not just an animal, sir. She's a sentient being who is suffering. My responsibility as a captain is to everyone under my command, regardless of whether they wear uniform. Harrison cut in. Your responsibility is to follow orders and maintain military discipline, both of which you failed spectacularly. The hearing continued for an hour. They presented evidence, energy logs, reports from crew members who had noticed the activity, even footage from security cameras showing equipment being moved during Gamma's shift. Daniel did not deny anything. There was no point. Patricia testified on his behalf, explaining how Rust had helped crew members with combat stress, how her presence had improved morale. Luis provided technical data showing the environmental system actually improved efficiency in surrounding sections. Keiko talked about the psychological benefits of green spaces on long deployments. The board listened politely and remained unmoved. Then Shurek was called to testify. The insectoid doctor entered the virtual hearing space, his multiple eyes focusing on the board. Doctor's log, supplemental entries regarding patient-designated Rust, Shurek said in his clicking, translated speech. Patient presented with severe depression, anxiety disorder, and failure to thrive syndrome. Condition deteriorating rapidly. Prognosis without intervention was terminal, estimated 2 to 4 weeks until death. Admiral Rodriguez leaned forward, and with intervention, patient responded immediately to environmental changes. Weight stabilized within 48 hours. Scale coloration improved. Behavioral markers indicate significant reduction in stress hormones. Current prognosis is full recovery. So the captain's actions saved the creature's life. Affirmative. Without this intervention, patient would have died. Harrison cut in again. That's very touching, Doctor, but it doesn't change the fact that Captain Cross broke regulations and defied orders. With respect, Admiral, Churk replied, in my species, we have a saying. Roughly translated, it means the law that destroys life serves only death. Captain Cross, preserve life. By our standards, that is the highest duty. We're not judging by your standards, Doctor. The hearing was about to conclude when someone unexpected joined the channel. A tall, elegant figure with silver skin and robes of state. Counselor Shireen of the Galactic Assembly. Forgive my intrusion, she said, her voice carrying the weight of authority. But I've been monitoring this proceeding, and I feel compelled to speak. Harrison looked annoyed. Counselor, this is an internal military matter. Is it? The Galactic Assembly has been watching humanity with great interest since you joined the community. Your species has a unique reputation. We're aware of our military capabilities. I'm not talking about your weapons, Admiral. I'm talking about your capacity for compassion. Your ability to make others feel safe. To create homes in impossible places. Shireen's image moved closer, her expression serious. Every species in the Assembly has strengths. The Taurians have technology. The Venturi have ancient wisdom. The Kalesh have numbers. But humans? Humans have something rarer. You see suffering, and you cannot help but respond to it. You build gardens in deserts. You make families with strangers. You look at the universe and insist it can be kinder. She gestured to the data on screen. This captain saw a dying creature and built her a sanctuary. Not because it was profitable, not because it served military objectives, but because it was right. And now you want to punish him for embodying the very qualities that make humanity valuable to the galactic community. Harrison's jaw tightened. Counselor, with respect, discipline and order are what make the fleet effective. And compassion is what makes humanity worth defending, Shireen countered. What message does it send if your own military cannot extend mercy to one creature under its care? If you punish kindness instead of celebrating it? The board conferred quietly. Daniel stood at attention, barely breathing. Finally, Admiral Rodriguez spoke. Captain Cross, you've put us in an impossible position. What you did was illegal. There's no question about that. But the counselor raises valid points about optics and values. We're proposing a compromise, Harrison said, clearly unhappy. The sanctuary stays, but it must pass full safety inspections and cannot interfere with ship operations. You'll be officially reprimanded, which will affect your promotion prospects. And you'll write a formal proposal for integrating non-combat personnel support systems on fleet vessels. Daniel blinked. Sir, if we're going to allow this, It needs to be more than just your pet project. Other ships are reporting similar morale issues. If your garden idea works, maybe it should be standard. You're approving it. We're not approving anything, Rodriguez said. We're declining to court-martial you, which given the circumstances is generous enough. Don't make us regret it. The channel closed. Daniel stood in his ready room, slightly stunned. Patricia entered a moment later, grinning. We won, she said. We actually won. We got lucky. If Counselor Shireen hadn't intervened, but she did, that's what matters. Patricia's expression softened. You should go tell Rust. Daniel found the dragon in her sanctuary, basking on her platform in artificial sunlight. When he entered, she lifted her head and made that humming sound. He climbed up beside her and sat with his back against her warm flank. We get to keep it, he said. They're going to inspect it, make sure it's safe, but we get to keep it. Rust turned her head to look at him with those ancient eyes. Then she did something she had never done before. She gently pressed her snout against his chest and left it there, breathing slowly. Daniel wrapped his arms around her massive head and closed his eyes. You're safe now. Finally safe. They sat like that for a long time, a human and a dragon, while outside the windows, the stars continued their eternal journey through the void. The next day, fleet inspectors arrived. Daniel showed them everything, hiding nothing. They examined the environmental systems, checked the structural modifications, tested the water quality. They interviewed crew members who had used the space. The lead inspector was a stern woman named Inspector Chun. She walked through the sanctuary slowly, making notes, her expression unreadable. Finally, she stopped in front of Daniel. This is actually impressive. The engineering is solid. The environmental balance is perfect. And I've never seen crew morale scores this high on a warship. Does that mean it means you pass inspection? Barely. She almost smiled. But between you and me, Captain, this is the best thing I've seen in 20 years of inspections. If you ever write that proposal they mentioned, I'll support it. After she left, the crew gathered in the sanctuary. All 8 of the original volunteers, plus others who had helped along the way. Rust moved among them, accepting gentle touches and offering her presence in return. To Rust, Patricia said, raising a drink. And to stubborn captains who refused to give up. To gardens in space, Luis added. To homes, Keiko said softly. Wherever we can build them. They drank and laughed and celebrated. And in the center of it all, a dragon hummed her contentment, surrounded by the strange, wonderful humans who had given her back her life. 6 months transformed everything. The sanctuary, now officially designated as Integrated Support Habitat 1, had become the heart of the Steadfast. Crew members requested time, slots to visit, finding peace among the plants and water. Russ seemed to understand her role in this new arrangement. She welcomed visitors with calm patience, somehow knowing who needed her presence most. Daniel documented everything. The mental health improvements, the reduction in disciplinary incidents, the way combat stress pilots could spend 30 minutes in the sanctuary and return to duty with steady hands. The data went into his proposal for fleet command, along with detailed construction plans and resource requirements. Other ships heard about it. Captains called asking questions. Engineers requested schematics. The impossible idea of gardens on warships was spreading, but Rust had changed too. Her scales gleamed brilliant rust red now, catching the artificial sunlight. She had gained weight, filling out to healthy proportions. She moved with grace and energy, no longer the broken creature who flinched at every sound. She had started doing something new as well. Every morning, she would arrange stones in careful patterns near the entrance to the sanctuary. Complex designs that she adjusted daily. Luis thought she was marking time. Keiko believed she was creating art. Daniel suspected she was simply expressing joy the only way she knew how. Young Ensign David Brooks spent hours watching her work. It's like meditation, he told Daniel. The way she moves each stone so carefully. Everything deliberate. Everything meaningful. She's happy, Daniel said simply. Yeah, she is. The change in Rust affected the entire crew. People who had been skeptical about housing a dragon now brought her gifts. Someone left fresh fruit by her sleeping den. Someone else carved wooden perches for the plants. The ship's cook started preparing special meals for her, consulting with Churik about dragon nutrition. Rust accepted it all with gentle dignity. Patricia noticed something else. She's protective of them now. Did you see how she positioned herself when that repair crew came through yesterday? She put herself between them and the plants. Daniel had seen it. Rust was claiming the space as hers, yes, but she was also protecting it, guarding the sanctuary for everyone who needed it. The first real test came during a routine patrol gone wrong. A distress signal from a mining outpost. Pirates. The Steadfast responded immediately, jumping to faster-than-light speed toward the crisis. The crew prepared for combat with practiced efficiency. Weapons charged. Shields powered up. Everyone at their stations. But Daniel noticed something different this time. No panique. No nervous energy. The crew moved with calm professionalism. Before heading to the bridge, he visited the sanctuary. Rust was there, surrounded by off-duty crew members seeking a moment of peace before possible battle. She moved among them, her presence somehow steadying. A pilot who usually shook before combat sat with her hand on Rust's side, breathing slowly. 5 minutes, Daniel announced quietly. Then everyone to stations. They filed out, each touching Rust in passing. A hand on her flank. Fingers brushing her wing. Small gestures of gratitude. The battle was brief but intense. The pirates fled when they realized they faced a fleet warship. No casualties. Minimal damage. But it could have gone differently. Afterward, Daniel found the same pilot in the sanctuary, crying quietly while Rust curled around her. The dragon made soft sounds, almost like crooning. She knows, the pilot said through tears. She always knows when someone's scared. Daniel left them alone. Some moments were too private to intrude upon. That night, he compiled another report. Combat effectiveness up 12%. Response times improved. Communication clearer. The sanctuary was not just helping mental health. It was making them better at their jobs. He submitted it to Fleet Command with a simple note. This works. We need this on every ship. Admiral Harrison called him the next day. Your reports are causing quite a stir, Captain. Good stir or bad stir, sir? Both. Some admirals think you've lost your mind. Others are already requesting construction permits for their own ships. Harrison paused. I'm in the latter category for what it's worth. Sir, I was wrong, Cross. About the dragon. About the sanctuary. About all of it. My ship could use something like this. My crew could use it. Daniel felt something loosen in his chest. Validation he had not realized he needed. The requests came flooding in after that. 73 ships wanted sanctuaries. Engineers needed training. Biologists wanted to consult. The project that started as one captain's desperate attempt to save his dragon friend became a fleet-wide initiative, but the Steadfast remained the original. The template. Other ships could copy the design, but they could not copy what made it special. The history. The love poured into every detail. The fact that it was built in secret by people who risked everything for one creature's happiness. And they could not copy Rust. She became something of a legend. The dragon who changed fleet policy. New recruits asked to see her. Visiting dignitari requested tour. She handled it all with patient grace, though Daniel made sure she had private time too. Even dragons needed rest from being famous. Counselor Shireen visited during a diplomatic stop. Daniel gave her a personal tour of the sanctuary. She walked slowly through the space, taking in every detail. This is what I meant, she said finally, when I spoke to the review board. This is humanity's gift. You take broken things and make them whole. You find ways to nurture life, even in places designed for death. We just did what felt right, Daniel said. Exactly. That's the gift. It feels right to you. Many species would never think to do this. The practicality would override the compassion. But humans? You cannot help yourselves. You see suffering, and you must respond. Rust approached the counselor, moving slowly, head lowered in respect. Shireen reached out and placed her hand on Rust's snout. Thank you, she said softly, for teaching them that protecting you is worth the risk, for showing them their own better nature. That evening, Daniel sat in the sanctuary during Gamma's shift. alone except for Rust, who dozed on her platform. He thought about how far they had come. From that cargo bay where she barely moved to this garden where she thrived. From defying orders to changing policy. From one captain's desperate act to a movement across the fleet. Did you know? He asked the sleeping dragon. When you followed me from Harith 7, did you know we'd end up here? Rust opened one eye, regarded him calmly, then closed it again. Her tail twitched slightly, possibly the dragon equivalent of a shrug. Daniel laughed quietly. Yeah, me neither. He stood and walked to the windows. Outside, stars blazed in their billions. Somewhere out there, on dozens of ships, construction crews were building new sanctuaries, following the template, creating places of gentleness aboard vessels of war, all because one dragon needed a home. All because one captain refused to give up. Patricia found him there an hour later. We're getting another request. The flagship wants to build one. Admiral Harrison himself signed off. That's good. It's more than good. It's victory. She stood beside him, looking out at the stars. You started something important, Daniel. Something that's going to outlast both of us. We started it. The whole team. Fine. We started it. But you fought for it when it mattered most. They watched Rust sleep, her breathing deep and steady. A dragon at peace aboard a human warship. An impossible thing that had become real through stubborn determination and love. She saved me, you know, Daniel said quietly. I think about who I was before Harith 7. So focused on duty, I forgot why duty mattered. She reminded me. Every day, just by existing, she reminds me what we're protecting. Life, Patricia said. Yeah, life. The emergency came without warning. A massive convoy of refugee ships, fleeing conflict in the outer territories. Hundreds of thousands of people with nowhere to go. The Steadfast received orders to escort them through contested space to safety. Daniel knew what that meant. Pirates. Scavengers. Maybe worse. The convoy would be a target, slow-moving and vulnerable. His ship would be the only thing standing between refugees and disaster. He briefed his crew honestly. This will be dangerous. We're outnumbered and operating far from support. Anyone who can't handle that should speak now. Nobody spoke. They had trained for this. More importantly, they had the sanctuary. A place to find calm before the storm in the days leading up to the mission. The sanctuary saw constant use. Crew members cycled through in shifts, spending precious minutes in peace before returning to preparation. Rust seemed to understand the tension. She moved among them more actively than usual, offering her presence to anyone who needed it. The day before departure, young David Brooks sat with her for over an hour. His hand shook slightly as he ran them over her scales. I'm scared, he admitted quietly. Rust lowered her head and pressed her snout gently against his chest. The same gesture she had given Daniel months ago. A gesture of family. Thanks, David whispered. I needed that. The convoy jumped to faster-than-light speed in formation. 300 refugee ships, fragile and desperate, with the Steadfast as their guardian. Daniel watched from the bridge as they emerged in contested space. The attacks started within hours. Small raider groups, testing their defenses. The Steadfast drove them off easily, but Daniel knew worse was coming. Between battles, the crew rotated through the sanctuary. 15-minute breaks to breathe and center themselves. It should not have worked. Conventional military thinking said they needed rest periods, not garden visits. But the data did not lie. His crew performed better, faster, more efficiently after time with Rust. The worst attack came on day 3. A full pirate fleet, 20 ships, moving to surround the convoy. The Steadfast was alone against impossible odds. All hands to battle stations, Daniel ordered. We hold the line. We do not let them through. The fight was brutal. The Steadfast took hits that rocked the entire ship. Alarms screamed. Damage reports flooded in. But the crew held together with remarkable composure. During a brief lull, Patricia pulled Daniel aside. Environmental systems are failing in sections 7 and 8. But the sanctuary is holding. The independent systems you built are keeping it stable. Can we use it? For what? Emergency shelter. If we have to evacuate sections, We'll need somewhere to send people. Patricia understood immediately. I'll coordinate with medical. The battle resumed. The steadfast dance between raider ships, shields blazing, weapons firing. They took damage, but gave worse. One pirate ship disabled, then another. But more kept coming. An explosion rocked the medical bay. Environmental systems failed across 2 decks. Crew members evacuated in controlled chaos, and many ended up in the sanctuary. The wounded, the exhausted, those in shock. Rust moved among them like she had been trained for this. She pressed close to people having panic attacks, her warmth and steady breathing somehow calming them. She carefully positioned herself near the injured, as if standing guard. Medical staff worked around her, treating wounds while she provided comfort. Churik moved through the chaos with efficiency. This is extraordinary. Patients are stabilizing faster than normal. The dragon's presence is measurably reducing shock and trauma responses. The battle continued for 6 more hours. The Steadfast fought with everything it had, protecting the refugees with desperate determination. The crew rotated through the sanctuary in the brief moments they could, finding strength to keep going. Finally, reinforcements arrived. 3 more fleet warships, responding to distress calls. The pirates scattered. The convoy was safe. Daniel stood on the bridge, exhausted beyond measure, and looked at the refugee ships continuing toward safety. They had done it. Against impossible odds, they had protected thousands of lives. The cost was high. The Steadfast was heavily damaged. Crew members injured. Systems failing across multiple decks. But everyone was alive. Everyone would go home. He visited the sanctuary after the battle. It was crowded with people, some sleeping, some sitting quietly, all finding solace in the green space. Rust lay in the center, surrounded by humans who had survived because of her indirect help. David Brooks sat against her side, bandaged but alive. "We made it," he said quietly. "Yeah," Daniel replied. "We did." The repairs took weeks. During that time, the sanctuary became even more vital, a place to process trauma, to grieve the close calls, to remember why they served. Fleet Command reviewed the mission data with intense interest. The sanctuary's role in maintaining crew effectiveness during extended combat was undeniable. The mental health benefits during crisis. The way it had served as an emergency shelter. Admiral Harrison sent a personal message. "Cross, your garden just saved lives in ways no weapon system could. Every ship in the fleet is getting one." That's an order. The program expanded rapidly. Sanctuaries on warships, gardens in space stations, green spaces on colony outposts. Each one unique, but all inspired by that first desperate attempt to save one dying dragon a year later. Daniel stood in the sanctuary during the ceremony. Fleet Command was presenting him with a commendation for innovation and exceptional service. The whole crew was there, plus representatives from other ships that had adopted the sanctuary program. But the real guest of honor was Rust. She perched on her platform, scales gleaming, healthy and strong. Looking at her now, it was hard to remember the broken creature from the cargo bay. Counselor Shireen attended via hologram. "Captain Cross, what you've built here represents the best of humanity. The capacity to look at a problem everyone else accepts and say no, there must be a better way. The willingness to risk everything for one life, which paradoxically ends up saving thousands." She turned to address everyone present. Other species build weapons. Humans build gardens. Other species accept suffering. Humans insist it can be healed. This sanctuary, and every one that follows, stands as proof that the strongest force in the galaxy is not firepower. It's compassion. After the ceremony, after the speeches and congratulations, Daniel found himself alone with Rust in the sanctuary. The stars wheeled past the windows. The water sang its gentle song. The plants swayed in artificial breeze. "I still can't believe we pulled this off," he said to her. One stubborn captain and one dying dragon, changing fleet policy. Rust made her humming sound and pressed her snout against his chest. Her way of saying she believed it just fine. "You know what the best part is?" Daniel continued. "It's not the commendation or the policy changes or any of that. It's knowing that somewhere out there on dozens of ships, there are people sitting in gardens just like this one, finding peace, healing, getting through another day, all because you needed a home. He looked around the sanctuary, remembering those frantic weeks of secret construction, the risk, the fear, the determination. We built this together, he said. Me, Patricia, Luis, Keiko, David, Ami, Tomas. All of us. But you were the reason. You were always the reason. Russ settled down beside him, and Daniel leaned against her warm flank. Through the windows, the stars continued their eternal dance. Somewhere out there, the galaxy turned with all its conflicts and chaos. But here, in this moment, there was only peace that a warship carried them through the darkness, bristling with weapons designed to destroy. But deep in its heart, past the armor and the reactors and the cold military efficiency, there was a garden. And in that garden, a dragon hummed her contentment, while a human captain finally understood what he had been fighting for all along. Not victory, not glory, not even survival, though that mattered, that he had been fighting for this. For the possibility of gentle things existing in harsh places. For the chance to protect the vulnerable and nurture the wounded. For homes built against all logic, proving that love could reshape even the most impossible circumstances. The fleet captain stood in his warship, surrounded by plants and water and one very content dragon. The most powerful weapons in the galaxy waited at his command. But the most important thing he had ever built was right here, a sanctuary. A home. A reminder that even in the darkest places, even aboard vessels designed for war, there must be spaces where life is cherished. Where the strong protect, not by destroying, but by making room for others to simply exist. Daniel Cross had built Rust a home. But in doing so, he had built something far greater. A vision of what military service could be. Should be. A fusion of strength and compassion. Power and peace. The sanctuary hummed with life around them. Outside, the war continued. Inside, a dragon and her human family proved that sometimes the bravest thing a warrior can do is choose gentleness. And in that choice, everything changed.